It's well known that in March of 1981, John Hinckley attempted to assassinate Ronald Reagan. What's not well known is that several years later, the life of the president and the life of the vice president were threatened again. In fact, not just once.
In the space of 18 months, 4 situations came to the attention of the Secret Service.
This is Robert Fine, who in the mid-'80s was working with the Secret Service as a psychologist. In 2 of these incidents, he says, people with weapons and an intent to kill appeared at public events. In 2, they were intercepted before the events. Now, all 4 of these cases were ultimately prosecuted, though the government didn't exactly advertise it.
These were not stories that hit the news, but they were situations that caused great concern for protectors. So after these incidents, the Secret Service leadership got together and said, we really would like to know more about the behaviors of these people.
And so Fine and a Secret Service agent named Brian Voskuil undertook the most extensive study of assassins and would-be assassins ever done. They identified 83 people who had completed assassinations or made assassination attempts since 1949. Some cases were known to the public, some not, and collected every document they could find. But also, Fine and Voskuil went to visit many of these people in jail. In 1999, they published their results in the Journal of Forensic Sciences. And the insights of this study are really interesting to look at. Perhaps the most interesting finding, at least to me, is that according to Fine and Voskuil, assassinations of political figures were almost never for political reasons.
It was very, very rare for the primary motive to be political, though there were a number of attackers who appeared to clothe their motives with some political rhetoric.
What emerges from the study is that rather than being politically motivated, most of the assassins and would-be assassins simply felt invisible. In the year before their attacks, most struggled with acute reversals and disappointment in their lives, which the paper argues often led to their true motive. They didn't want to be nonentities.
They experienced failure after failure after failure and decided rather than being a nobody, they wanted to be a somebody.
They chose political targets then because political targets were a sure way to transform this situation. Then they would be famous. Randy Borum is a professor at the University of South Florida who worked on this study.
If the objective is notoriety or fame, that's the most efficient instrumental mechanism by which to achieve that. I don't mean to be flip about that, but a public official is likely to bring them a substantial amount of recognition instantly without having to achieve something.
One thing Borum and Fine say about choosing a political figure as opposed to, for example, a show business celebrity, is that the attacker is able to associate himself with a broader political movement or goal, which allows the assassin not to see himself as such a bad person. In this way, Borum says, assassins are basically murderers in search of a cause.
People make decisions to act, and then from that construct for themselves and potentially for others a narrative about why that is okay or how this could be justified. It's sort of a reverse pattern from what we would typically think.
Now, the other assumption that people make about assassins is that they're insane, people completely divorced from reality. But this study, to a degree, rejects that idea as too simplistic. Yes, the author's right. Many of the people were experiencing or had experienced serious mental health issues. 44% had a history of depression, 43% a history of delusional ideas. But as Robert Fine points out, the way these people sought to address what they saw as their main problems, anonymity and failure, wasn't inherently crazy.
There's nothing crazy about thinking that if I attacked the president or a major public official, I'd get a lot of attention. I would get a lot of attention. My goal was notoriety. That's why I brought the weapon.
And Fine says most of the assassins and would-be assassins weren't totally disorganized by mental illness either.
They were quite organized, because one has to be organized to at least some extent to attack a public official.